My residence was targeted by a cowardly attack, but thank God I'm in good health. Your security and military forces are working for Iraq's stability and protection.
Some analysis on what's happening in Iraq right now by bringing in Afzal Ashraf. He's an assistant professor in international relations and security at the University of Nottingham. He's joining us now from London. Afzal, thank you very much for being with us. So what do we understand has taken place here? An assassination attempt. Who do we think is behind it?
Well, of course, as your report has already pointed out, we don't know officially who's behind it, but the political parties and indeed the militias have a great deal to gain from all of this. I think we have to understand two things. One is that the so-called democracy in Iraq was never allowed to flourish in a democratic way, in that the Americans first introduced elections in 2005 when nobody really knew what the parties stood for. New parties didn't have a chance to set out their manifestos so that people could choose on the basis of party manifesto. Rather, they were forced to choose on the basis of identity. And the militant parties, those that had rebelled against Saddam Hussein and those that had been supported in exile by the Iranians, as well as some of the Kurdish parties who had been fighting an insurgency for decades. It was these parties that really were organized enough to take advantage of the democratic elections. And so what we have is a great deal of militants, and you have a disconnect between these militant parties, the prominent parties, and the public, who are hugely dissatisfied. And the second thing we need to remember is that drones are now so easily available and they're so advanced that just about anybody, even a small group of individuals, could launch this attack. It doesn't have to be a major country or certainly even a major party to have launched this sort of attack.
And of course, we'll remember that there were large-scale protests on Friday in Baghdad, which ended in some violence with security forces and a number of protesters being hurt. It's correct to assume that this assassination, I guess, is a follow-on from that.
Well, it could be, but you see, those protests are not unique. They have been around for a long time, for several years. There have been massive popular protests, protesting against problems with services, essential services, protesting against corruption. And of course, these recent protests, as you rightly point out, have been people who have rejected the result of the last elections. And yes, it's possible that they're related, but not necessarily the case. There are many people who would want a government that is at all representative of the will of the people to change, because that is something I think, certainly according to most Iraqi citizens, that is not what they've had in recent times. It is really an interesting case in the challenge that democracy as a concept has with party political interests. And I think that, sadly, the victims in all of this are the Iraqi people, but at the moment I think it's hard to identify who of the many potential suspects could be responsible for this attack.
You're absolutely right, and indication of the lack of stability in Iraq right now. Okay, Professor Afzal Ashraf, do appreciate your analysis. Always good to have you with us. Thank you.